So let's first talk about how can I automate the actual packaging of the content, the actual creation of the content. So it was produced in post-production. As I said, on the left side, it sits in some archiving system managed by Media Archive and stored on Media Grid, for example. But for the most part, it was produced for content for television applications. That's what I have. It's on the left side. On the right side, I have all those new media outlets. That's where I want to send the content to. The mobile platforms, the web pages, the IPTV platforms, and maybe also a standard definition or a separate linear channel that gets provided. So how can I automate that? And this slide breaks it down into 5 steps. The first step is ingest. And what I mean by ingest here is not actually capturing from tape. That might be the case. But what I mean by ingest is just that I need to interface with the production systems and be able to deal with the video formats that are stored there. So being able to, get a media file out of Avid storage, or to be able to read an MXF file as it is captured by an Omnion server. So there's an integration point to make sure I can access the content. The second step is labeled non-creative production here. And this is where I use playlist information, EDL information that I have in my upstream processes that allow me to automatically reassemble the process and find and tweak it for a particular distribution outlet. I mentioned earlier, for example, I go to a mobile platform. I want to segment it down into 1 minute clips that really just show the goals, or that really just show the highlights of a particular piece. I don't want to have the whole 1 hour show. So if I can automate that, again, that would eliminate a manual step, having to go back to post-production, recutting the content by an editor, exporting it back out. That's an expensive manual step. If I have metadata, I can probably automate that to some degree. Other challenges here, for example, if I get audio from a dubbing house, I might want to marry that in at this point as well. The next step is content enhancement. So for example, if I have a lower third graphic and if I go to high definition, I can use a font size that's relatively small to the overall size of the screen, because for the most part, I'm going to play it back on a 40-inch screen or something like that. So I can have relatively small fonts, and they're pretty much readable by most viewers. Now, if I would just take that content, I scale it down and play it back on an iPhone, for the most part, I will not be able to read that font anymore unless I, go really close, which I don't really want to do. So there might be some graphics challenges, for example, where I want to change the graphics based on a particular distribution that I'm sending my content to. Again, I want to automate that. I do not want to go back into the post-production system to do that. The next part is content globalization and standards and compliancy. And by that we mean, well, clearly there are things like if I distribute my content to a video-on-demand system in North America, I have to change my frame rate from 25 to 30 as part of that. But there are other challenges like picking the right audio tracks, or making sure that my first audio track is English and the second one is German, for example, and not the other way around, because that would screw up the playback system, things like that. Or if subtitles are required, I do want to marry the subtitles into the video at this point, if it's required by the regulators in a particular country. And the very last step is the actual transcoding of the content into a format that is suitable for a particular playback device. So a 3GPP file for a mobile platform, or a .mp4 file for desktop video in a flash player, or an MPEG-2 transport stream for playback on a video-on-demand system. And again, all of this you want to automate. So as part of this, of course, there's challenges. I mentioned that you want to automate the non-creative production. That's the segmenting and stitching of content, adding a bumper at the beginning. And as I mentioned, you can use metadata to simplify and drive that process and automate this process. Publishing to the web, if I have one of these automation platforms, another challenge for publishing to the web is that the formats are constantly changing. So, 2 years ago, nobody was using Flash video, everybody was using Windows Media. Then Flash emerged in the course of probably 6 months, everything switched over. So you need a platform that's flexible enough that lets you follow these changes in the industry without having completely new tools, a completely new workflow. You need to train new staff just to support these new capabilities. And right now we see Another change that was sparked by Microsoft and having their smooth streaming fragmented MPEG-4 format, for example, and Adobe is following. So there's another format that needs to be generated. So I think for the foreseeable future, you will still see those format changes on those platforms. There are challenges that revolve around localizing the content, picking the right language tracks, picking the right subtitle tracks. Now, there are other challenges. This process needs to be fast depending on the application, but if you have like a just missed workflow, for example, or a restart TV workflow, you might want to be able to have your news program on the website as soon as the telecast is over. And for that, you need a system that provides that performance, and that's things like ingest files while they're still being captured, having gridding to use a farm to transcode the content, and also be able to manage priorities of all those transcode production operations in the correct order, so that the archive project doesn't bump a news show, for example.